I'm Allie, and today on Plotopsy, we're dissecting Steal the Sky with Marina Massino.
Hi, Allie. Thank you so much for reading and loving Steal the Sky. It is amazing to hear that as a debut indie author. And thanks for inviting me on here to answer some questions. I'm excited. Let's get into it.
I gotta know, personally, who would you be drawn to? The mysterious Dragon King or the charming rogue leader?
So I'm going to give a bit of a cheeky answer for this one. Partly to not give anything away, but also it's true. I wrote two characters I could personally see myself being drawn to, and so both of them have aspects that I think I personally would find alluring, and as if you read the book, you'll see that for yourself too.
I can relate. I definitely had some feelings going both ways. I felt like you wrote the characters to be so complex, and that's all I'll say on that. But speaking of that, what inspired the moral complexity of Zhoric's character?
So I am a very empathetic person. I am constantly, when I meet people or deal with people, I'm constantly looking for why they make the choices that they make and how did they get there. And so I've had a few people in my life, and I'm not going to say specifically who, that are, there's just more to them than they present. And when you find the depth in those people, it's almost impossible not to be drawn to them and to not want to engage with them. And I think that's kind of where I drew from for Zhoric's character.
Well, there is definitely an unmistakable depth to his character. How did you approach writing the relationship between Kaisa and Zhoric to make it believable and realistic?
Well, one, thank you for thinking it was believable and realistic, like author goals. But I'll go back to like kind of that idea of empathy, and more so about this one about curiosity. In their relationship and in their dynamic, there's definitely curiosity there. They want to understand each other, and I think that's what people hold in them. It's like a natural thing for people to hold in them, is this idea of curiosity. And I think that Kaisa and Zhoric really have that for each other. And I think that in and of itself is such a basic human quality that it makes their characters and their relationship believable.
Now, if you were in Kaisa's position, would you confront the lying Dragon King or plot in secret?
I want to say that I would confront the lying Dragon King, but realistically, I'd be plotting in secret.
Well, in that case, if you had dragon magic, what's the first thing you would do to rebel?
Depending on the kind of dragon magic I had, and maybe this is a bit villainous of me, but there is one dragon character, I'll try to say this without too many spoilers, but they can get into people's minds, possibly manipulate them, and I would probably try to change people's minds, basically unbrainwash them and get them on our side. Is that bad? I don't know.
Marina out here having her villain moment. I love it. Now, I feel like everyone who reads Steal the Sky is going to be a little surprised with themselves and what they discover about themselves. What role does self-discovery play in Kaisa's journey, and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Kaisa's self-discovery in her journey is everything. It's almost an awakening, I think, is the best way to put that without trying to give away too many spoilers. But yeah, I think it's an important thing that I want women to discover when they read this book, that you have more power in you than you know, that you have more, there's more inside of you than that you've ever been told that you can have. And her self-discovery, I think, is what I want women readers especially to take away from this.
That's a really powerful message. If you could pick one moment in the story that represents claiming one's power, what would it be?
This one's a really hard one to answer without giving anything away. So If I may, I'm going to answer this a bit with a beginning part of the book that alludes to the theme later, in which Kaisa decides to avoid her fate by creating essentially a birth control to not have to give birth to children for the dragon shifters. And that initial moment of agency and claiming power in a small space, in a small way, I think is a big example of how people can even do that in our everyday lives. Because no, you might not be able to take down a whole system single-handedly or do any sort of major moves on your own or even within a small group, but we can all do tiny microaggressions against aspects of our existence that we are looking to break down and change. And so I think that would be a non-spoilery version.
That reminds me, there are a lot of different elements in this book, from romance to fantasy to political intrigue. How did you go about writing those and balancing all of those without one of them overshadowing the other?
So when I set out to write Steal the Sky, I wanted a balanced romantasy, fantasy romance. I had read a lot of fantasy romance where the fantasy elements weren't quite there for me, or some things just didn't line up, and I wasn't jiving with some of them. So when I set out to write this book, I really wanted to hit that balance because that's what I enjoy reading. And so when I was building out this story, I really focused on the beats. Like, I've spent a lot of time here discussing the world building, the fantasy, XYZ. Time to give a little bit more spotlight on the romance, and we've been here in the romance for a bit. It's time to take that up a notch with the political intrigue. So it was really just a cyclical, beat for beat cycling of those three things and making that feel balanced in a cohesive plot, and I think I accomplished that. You'll have to read it and tell me what you think.
Well, I for one think you absolutely nailed that. At no point does anything feel forced into the story. It feels like it all plays out so naturally. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and if this doesn't make people want to read this book, then they're crazy.
Allie, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun to answer your questions and to talk about Steal the Sky. And if any of your followers are interested in reading Steal the Sky, please do so. It's super important for debut indie authors especially. And don't forget to leave a review if you love it. Thanks.
Go check out Steal the Sky. You can find the link in my bio or in the comments below, and it's also in my top 5 romantasy reads on my link tree. See you back here next week for another Plotopsy.